Rome was the empire that defined the definition of empire. Rome was the first of its kind. Before Rome, Egypt was considered an empire. And Egypt was this small country that was built along the Nile River, with a few triangles in the middle of a desert. Rome was what made Europe the powerhouse of the world for the next few millenniums. But before you can fully understand this imperial empire, you need to start at the beginning. The city of Rome is located in the center of what we now know as Italy. The area where the city of Rome was founded was perfect. There was a river to get water from, the land was fertile, the weather of Rome was cold, but it was warm compared to temperatures up north. The legend of Rome is that it was founded by two brothers, Remus and Romulus, who were apparently raised by wolves. The brothers went to start a town where they grew up, but there was one problem. They disagreed on which hill Rome should be on. So Romulus settled the argument by just killing Remus, and so Rome was founded on the hill named Palatine Hill. But that's just a legend. We don't know if Romulus actually existed and was the first king of Rome. What I know a lot of people believe is that Romulus existed, but he wasn't raised by wolves. He was just turned into a legend when years later people sing around a campfire told stories of the first king. What we do know is that there was proof of a city called Rome existing from as early as 753 BCE. Rome was a successful city-state. A city-state is a city that is so large and so powerful that it's its own country. But this all changed around the time of the 600 BCE mark, when the Etruscans, a civilization from the north, invaded Rome and took the city by storm. Rome would remain under the control of the Etruscan princes for about 100 years. But soon, a man named Junius Brutus in 509 BCE led a revolt that had all Etruscans killed or expelled from the city of Rome. Rome would continue to enter wars with the Etruscans. Rome would seek allies with other Latin tribes in the area. Soon, in the year 396 BCE, Rome captured Veii, a powerful Etruscan city which was a major victory in Rome's campaign. But soon terror struck when other invaders from the north defeated the Roman army and invaded Rome. They sacked and pillaged the city, destroying huge chunks of Rome. But the Romans were able to rebuild their civilization, and by the year 272 BCE, Rome had 150,000 inhabitants, which was a lot considering that there was only a few million people in the entire world. Soon Rome had crushed the Etruscans and expanded their borders to include more of Central and South Italy. But how was Rome winning all these wars? You see, Rome had one of the most disciplined military forces in the world. Any citizen from the ages of 17 to 22 could enlist to join the army for a career spanning up to 20 years. The Roman army was made up of citizens who weren't doing the job professionally. They were more volunteers. Soldiers weren't paid a wage. In fact, soldiers weren't even provided with their own gear. The soldiers were meant to pay for their own gear themselves. So why was joining the army such a popular idea? Because a really successful soldier could eventually become a general, and a general could become rich and famous. It was also seen as an honor to fight for your country. But one problem with this system is most of the people who joined the Roman army had land to tend to, or had families to support. So they couldn't be gone for long. So the Roman army was only in use from late spring to early autumn. Otherwise, soldiers would go back to their normal lives. The Roman army was very well equipped. They had a double-edged dagger for a close combat stab. They had heavy javelins that once they pierced a shield could not be removed in battle. They also had a large shield which, if they all stood together, they could put their shields together and make a protective-like rectangle called a testudo, which is Latin for tortoise. The Roman army had many units. The three most common being a century, consisting of about 80 men. Then there's a cohort, consisting of 6 centuries. And finally there's a famous legion, consisting of about 10 corps. Around 6,000 troops in total. Punishment was harsh. If a soldier was caught off guard, they could be sentenced to death. When the wars were over, Rome needed a government. The people of Rome, being resentful towards kings, decided they would adopt a new form of government. After hearing word of a new kind of government in Athens, where every man, rich or poor, had a say in politics, the Romans decided to adopt this idea, turning Rome into a democratic republic. Rome's republic worked by having two consuls at the very top. The consuls were our Monday equivalent of a president. Every few years, an election would be held to decide who would be the next consul. The reason there were two consuls was so they could veto each other. Veto basically means no or disagree. For example, if one consul wanted to build a road but the other one didn't, the other consul could veto the idea and the road wouldn't be built. Things only happened when the consuls both agreed on it. Then there was the Senate. The Senate consisted of about 300 upper-class citizens. The Senate's job was to introduce ideas, debate ideas, and vote on ideas. Although the consuls didn't have to listen to the Senate, in most cases they ended up doing what the majority said. There were also about 50 magistrates that were elected every year. These were the more specialized divisions of government. The pecking order was this. At the top there was a consul, who we already talked about. Then there were the praetors. The praetors were the judges of Rome. They were in charge of administrating the law. Then below them were the aediles. The aediles' job was to take care of specific parts of administration. For example, there'd be an aedile to manage buildings, an aedile to manage food, and so on. Then below them were the quaestors. They took care of financial and administrative matters. They were the ancient times equivalent of accountants and civil servants. The magistrates could only stay in power for 1 year, then new officials would be elected. So Rome was a well-managed, incorruptible democracy that stood for the rights of everyone. Or it was supposed to. You see, in theory, every man, rich or poor, had a say in how the country was run, but in reality, it was the rich upper class pulling all the strings. But this proved to be a bad idea because around 300 BCE, Roman citizens went on strike. They were growing tired of the upper class known as patricians having all the say in how Rome is run. Patricians were rich Romans, powerful generals, or high-paid government officials like consuls and senators. The patricians ended the revolt when they agreed to give people a bigger say in parliament. But still, not a huge say. Negotiation was their only option, because less than 1% of Rome were patricians, and the rest were plebeians. Plebeians were the poor and working class of Rome. They were the average majority. So they allowed these people called tribunes to join the Senate. The tribunes were average plebeians, who, like the other magistrates, would be elected every year. There was about 10 tribunes in total. The tribunes were considered magistrates, but they were the lowest kind. But they could still call the Senate for meetings to bring issues to the table. There was still corruption and manipulation, but what government didn't have this? Rome still had one of the most stable governments in the world. But while Rome was busy sorting itself out, a storm was brewing. Their greatest rival Carthage was preparing for war over the island of Sicily. But that's for next time, when we go into the First Punic War. Thanks for watching.